Hello, hi, congratulations. Thanks for taking the time out. I know you guys must be really, really busy, but Meghan, can you tell me what it's like?
Great to see you. You've got this blockbuster book. I've been reveling in your extracts. Very juicy stuff.
Harry, to put it politely, I think she is very manipulative. Meghan Markle is someone who's basically got rid of almost her entire family on her side, apart from her mother, her entire family on the father's side, including her father, which is incredibly sad. And now she's wrestled Harry away from his family.
Piers Morgan sat opposite his interviewer wearing that familiar, knowing expression, the one that signals he's holding information no one else in the room has yet seen. And then he said something that instantly detonated across the internet. Within hours, ITV was overwhelmed. More than 57,000 complaints poured in, demanding his dismissal, all because he had dared to articulate doubts that many people had only whispered privately. But the detail that truly chilled observers came later. Meghan Markle herself, according to Piers, personally contacted his employers behind the scenes, attempting to pressure them into removing him. Not through official representatives. Not via intermediaries. Directly. Piers only learned of it after he had already left the network. Pause on that for a moment. A woman who publicly champions free speech and claims to stand firmly against bullying was allegedly working privately to silence a journalist because he refused to accept her account without question. And yet, as Piers later remarked with thinly veiled satisfaction, he remains very much uncancelled. Why? Because truth, as he put it, has a way of resurfacing. And the material he claims to possess is deeply damaging. What struck Piers most, he explained, was not just Meghan's anger over his comments, but the sheer intensity of her response. This wasn't frustration. It was desperation. According to him, she wasn't merely upset, she was orchestrating a coordinated effort to destroy his career because he would not cooperate with the carefully constructed narrative she had presented to the world. And that's where things took a darker turn. Every inconsistency Piers highlighted, every timeline discrepancy, every unanswered question, none of it has been fully addressed to this day. Not by Meghan. Not by Harry. Not by palace officials. Not by anyone. And when someone invests that much energy into silencing criticism instead of disproving it, it naturally raises an uncomfortable question. What are they trying to hide? Because by this point, Piers argued, the evidence was no longer isolated or circumstantial. It formed a pattern. One so persistent that even some of Meghan's most loyal supporters began feeling uneasy. The pregnancy itself became the focal point. Catherine, Princess of Wales, famously stood outside the Lindo wing just hours after giving birth, 3 separate times, wearing heels, styled hair, and full makeup, presenting her newborns to the public. These moments weren't about vanity. They were about transparency, tradition, and public trust. Meghan's pregnancy unfolded very differently. Her appearances often felt inconsistent. In some photos, the baby bump appeared prominent and carefully cradled. She moved slowly, lowered herself into chairs with exaggerated care, and projected fragility. Yet in other appearances, sometimes only days apart, the bump appeared noticeably different. Smaller. Positioned differently. Her movement unrestricted. She climbed stairs, bent down, pivoted easily, even wearing high heels without hesitation. Observers didn't dismiss this lightly. Royal watchers have analyzed public pregnancies for decades. They know what scrutiny looks like. And what unsettled them wasn't one awkward photograph, it was repetition. One day heavily pregnant, the next moving with ease. Over and over. Online, comparisons spread rapidly. Side-by-side images. Video clips. Timelines. The same questions echoed everywhere. How does a pregnancy fluctuate like this? The implication many were reluctant to voice began forming anyway. Then came the documents Piers referenced, claims that internal scheduling notes existed tracking Meghan's movements throughout the pregnancy. According to those allegations, certain medical appointments overlapped with public appearances miles away. Entire days conflicted. Not tight scheduling. Not clerical errors. Fundamental contradictions. You can't be in 2 places at once. Pregnancy timelines don't bend to convenience. Another detail intensified scrutiny: the home birth narrative. Meghan had reportedly expressed her desire for a private, natural home birth at Frogmore Cottage. The story aligned perfectly with her public image and was widely accepted. But on May 6, 2019, she gave birth at the Portland Hospital in London instead. Again, hospital births aren't unusual or controversial. What raised eyebrows was the silence. No explanation. No acknowledgement that plans had changed. No medical clarification. The narrative simply shifted overnight, as though the original promise had never existed. That silence proved costly. It prompted people to re-examine everything that came before. Then Piers made the claim that split audiences completely. According to him, multiple versions of Archie's birth announcement had been drafted in advance. Different outcomes, different details, prepared like a PR rollout. He asked a pointed question: who pre-writes motherhood like a corporate campaign? To Piers, this wasn't preparation. It was production. And once again, no response followed. No denial. No clarification. Just silence. Things worsened with the Buckingham Palace timing debacle. Harry and Meghan allegedly failed to inform palace communications when Meghan went into labor. The palace released a statement only to have it contradicted by the Sussex version minutes later, making the institution appear confused or misleading. According to Piers, this wasn't accidental. It was strategic. Control over the narrative came first, even if it made the palace look incompetent. As more people noticed this pattern of meticulous orchestration, the fairy tale began to crack. Then the Oprah interview came back under scrutiny. Meghan's account of isolation and abandonment during pregnancy had moved millions. But leaked internal memos, never conclusively denied, painted a different picture. According to those documents, palace staff were accommodating every request immediately, rearranging schedules, canceling commitments, working overtime. More troubling were claims that Meghan declined invitations to meetings, only to later describe herself publicly as excluded. To Piers, this wasn't neglect. It was indulgence reframed as victimhood. And once that interpretation took hold, everything shifted. What followed was silence, total, prolonged silence. No legal threats. No spokesperson. No celebrity defenders. No rebuttals. Harry, whose post-royal identity centered on protecting his family from false narratives, said nothing. That absence spoke volumes. Public opinion began to change, not explosively, but gradually. Supporters grew uncertain. Skepticism replaced sympathy. With no effort to disprove the claims, speculation hardened into belief. Piers dissected Meghan's interviews frame by frame, noting emotional pacing, carefully timed pauses, and repeated patterns across platforms. He argued the vulnerability felt practiced rather than spontaneous. Once people saw it, they couldn't unsee it. His most controversial argument was this: that pregnancy and motherhood had become a shield, a cultural force field. Questioning inconsistencies became taboo. Scrutiny was reframed as cruelty. And every time pressure mounted, the narrative pivoted back to emotional hardship. Whether one agreed or not, a pattern was undeniable. And once that pattern was recognized, its power weakened. The controversy evolved beyond pregnancy photos or hospital timelines. It became about trust, credibility, whether anything the Sussexes said could be accepted without skepticism. Doubt, once planted, doesn't shout. It lingers. The damage didn't come from one allegation, but from accumulation. Shifting stories, silent responses, carefully staged moments. Together, they eroded belief. Compared with William and Catherine's transparency, the contrast only sharpened suspicion. This wasn't a scandal that exploded. It seeped. And once public trust fractures at that level, it rarely fully recovers. That, Piers Morgan argued, was the real consequence, not proving any single claim, but ensuring the questions never go away. And in that sense, he achieved exactly what he intended.